Los Angeles photographer Michael Kirchoff is the editor-in-chief of Analog Forever magazine. He is a commercial photographer using digital cameras and processes, but for his personal and artistic work, he often uses toy cameras. He is the editor at Catalyst Interviews and co-host of the Diffusion Tapes podcast. Today, Michael Kirchoff discusses his myFIVE images from Ansel Adams, Jerry Yulesman, Norman Seif, Matt Mahiran, and Maxfield Parrish.
Tell us a little bit about Analog Forever magazine. Tell us about it.
Analog Forever was started by myself and Michael Beelan, who is essentially our founder, and I operate as the editor-in-chief. We have two other core members named Nini and Kelly and Lisa Tobos. And we started in 2018, and we started online only for a year. And then after a year, we just decided to put out our first actual print edition, because if you're going to be an analog magazine, you better put out an analog magazine. So we did that. That was launched in, I think it was fall of 2019. And at the moment, we are about to release our 10th edition.
Well, so who are you as a photographer? I know you're a professional, so you shoot digitally in terms of your professional world, but your art is, I think you were telling me before, is mostly analog. And what is that about?
Yeah. So I've been a professional photographer for over 35 years at this point, and now in the professional realm, we pretty much have to shoot digitally, and so there could be one day where I'm doing a shoot in the studio and I'm using the latest, greatest digital model and computer software and all of that, all the bells and whistles and all the toys. And then the next day I'm, trudging through the desert with a plastic toy camera and some Polaroid materials and an old Graflex camera. The Polaroid hasn't expired in 2009, but somehow some of it still works. So I make things as difficult as I possibly can for my personal work. But it brings something special out in the process of doing that. And it gives me a really robust, creative outlet away from the commercial work.
How did you decide on the 5 images? Is there a through line for them? For what's the logic behind the images you've chosen today?
Yeah, they are. I mean, I would say by and large, the order that we're going to do them in is how they came into my head, and kind of reviewing them, I realized that the first one was probably one of the earliest inspirations, and the last one was probably the latest.
Well, let's take a look at those images.
Yeah, great.
And that first image will come from the great Ansel Adams. Tell us about this one.
The first image is, yes, Ansel Adams. It's Winter Sunrise, Sierra Nevada from Lone Pine from 1944. And I would say that this was probably one of the first of the early inspirational photographs that really struck me. This one was probably due in part both from when I was first in school learning about photography. My father was very much into what I was doing. He liked that I was doing something creative, and it's something that I loved, because that was something that he had always told me that I should do as my career, because he was always kind of unhappy in his own work life. So he wanted to make sure that I made the right decisions for me. And he is actually the one that suggested that I read Ansel Adams' autobiography. And I think when I read, I think Ansel had literally, like, within a few months, had just passed away. So unfortunately, I was never able to kind of reach out to him like I do with artists these days. But I did read the book, and for some reason, this is an image that really kind of stood out to me. And I remember walking through some, like poster shop in a mall where I was growing up, and there was a framed photograph of this. So I had this print hanging over my bed for many, many years.
Hmm.
I actually don't know where it is these days, probably somewhere in my garage, but it was an image I found to be very immersive, very dramatic, and one of the kind of the jokes of it is too is my current better half, like she was always drawn to this photograph as well. And it wasn't until we had talked about it that I mentioned the horse in the photograph, and she was like, "What? There's a horse?" She had never really. She always liked the image, but she didn't
Yeah.
really. So now there's kind of an ongoing joke when we're kind of traveling or we're looking at other photographs. We're like, "Did you see the horse?"
Jerry Yulesman with your second image.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we just lost Jerry not too long ago. Also, probably an educator of the highest order. I mean, I would think equally as inspirational to so many people that I know, especially in terms of helping with just not just the education of photography and learning about what it was that you wanted to do and how to go about it, but just the images themselves I find very inspirational. They're obviously very surreal,
Yeah.
many of them. And this one I particularly was gravitated to or had gravitated to, but it's from 1976. And one of the reasons it really kind of hit me over the head is the very first photo book that I ever purchased when I was a student was also kind of it had about a kind of a how-to component to it. But it was a Jerry Yulesman book, and it was filled with his photographs. But there was a lot of text and a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes photographs of how he made the pictures and the conceptual nature of all of them. I mean, I think it just kind of like broadened my horizons, especially being so immersed in Ansel's work for so long, and it seemed very traditional landscape to suddenly find somebody who was taking different types of elements, landscapes and interiors and portraits, and making them these conceptual constructions pre-Photoshop in the darkroom. To me, was very astounding. As much as Ansel's work is, Jerry's work really opened my eyes as to what the possibilities were in the darkroom.
So you go away from photography for your third image of influence. Tell us about this one from Maxfield Parrish.
I was introduced to his work because I had a love of antiques, and I have a sister and brother-in-law who were in the antique business. And I remember they had, I believe it was this, it was a copy of this painting in their home, and it was one of those images that you kind of like, as you walk by, you see it out of the corner of your eye, and you just stop, and you turn and you look at it, and you're immediately taken into it and immersed by it. I mean, I remember that moment very vividly. And one of the things that struck me was not, it was, first of all, it was color. And it's the only really color image that I've included. I wanted to bring it up for two reasons. One is because something that I found later is that Maxfield Parrish, his paintings were done from photographs. He was basically, taking different elements of different photographs and making them in one sitting, not one sitting, but one particular piece. And again, so they would contain landscape, portraiture, interiors, exteriors, architecture. There are a lot of different elements going on. He created such a depth to everything that he was doing. And I attribute that to but two things. And one is the color, and one is the light. It's one of the, obviously the most important thing in a photograph is the light. And the fact that he was able to translate that into a painting and make it, I mean, they look very photorealistic. All of his work is like that.
Your fourth image comes from Norman's, is it Seif? Is that how that's pronounced?
Right. Yeah.
Who's not been featured on the program before. So tell us about Norman. I'm not familiar.
That's too bad, because I think that he's one of my five, because I find him to be extremely inspirational with his photography. And what he has always done is he's also like me, and what I'm kind of doing is there's an examination of the creative process. He was also filming behind the scenes, like the making of these photographs, and he was basically documenting his creative process. And it had a lot to do with everything from the setup to the lighting to the conversations that he was having with these wildly famous people. And it was about, the conversations were often about creativity and inspiration. And exactly what we're doing right now is something that he was doing with somebody like Frank Zappa. In this one was also from 1976. And there are several photographs, well-known photographs from this particular session with Frank Zappa. But this is the one that always stood out to me because it was so, it was very kind of in your face. And I think that it says an equal amount about Frank, and it says an equal amount about Norman and who they were as individuals, because there's a great element of humor to the whole thing. And again, because we're seeing these lighting umbrellas reflected in Frank's sunglasses, there's a behind the scenes aspect to it all.
Matt Mehurin, with your fifth and maybe final image. He's been featured a couple of times on here, and I always love hearing people talk about them. And it's mostly people from the West Coast like yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why.
I don't know.
That'd be a good, I'll have to ask him. I've actually wanted to interview him myself. This is actually a still from one of his music videos, because I knew that I had seen his work before, but I didn't know his name or what he was about until he was making a lot of music videos for a lot, not just bands that I was interested in, but bands that I wasn't interested in. But I found the visuals that he would create in those other bands equally as compelling as anything in a video such as this. This was from Metallica's The Unforgiven video. And I basically just kind of did a little bit of a freeze frame because I just wanted it to be something recognizable, because that's what was difficult to find in any of his music videos. Is if you were to take a still out of all of them, they're very evocative stills, but they don't, he uses them to tell a story. He's basically a still photographer who is putting together a sequence of still photographs in a motion-based format. And he also paints. He's an illustrator, he's a painter, he does the music videos, he's a photographer. And I think most people know him mostly as a photographer, but I know him mostly as a music video creator.
I have been, in the almost year that we've been doing this series, the myFIVE series, rigid about it being 5. That's you're going to get it. You're going to get a pass because you sent an additional image that you wanted to talk about. The cover from Black Sabbath.
Yes.
This is number 6. You're getting a special dispensation to talk about number 6 here.
All right. Welcome everybody to my 6. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't really mean to do that, but I found it difficult to stay within 5. I mean, when we first talked about this, we were, you were saying, people often have a hard time coming up with 5. I had a hard time taking it from 100 down to 5. It was, I mean, I've been so inspired by so many other people's work. And because I'm always examining what other people are doing as part of my own creative process, that it was hard for me to narrow things down. So I ended up with 6. And I chose this one for a couple of different reasons. I chose it. One was because it became a very iconic image to me growing up, not necessarily because of the music, even though this is definitely the music that I love and I gravitate to, but it was a very pivotal moment in the band's career, and it's become a very iconic image. If you took away the text and you show this to a lot of people, they'll immediately tell you the band and they'll tell you the name of the album, because it became so iconic so quickly that I think that that's one of the things that we kind of strive for with our own work. Like, we want people to see an image of ours and immediately snap their fingers, point at it and say, that's Michael Kirchoff's image, or, that's Ansel Adams' image. I mean, when all of the pictures that we've shown, there's a lot of people out there who will know who they are, even if we didn't tell them.
Well, Michael Kirchoff, editor-in-chief of Analog Forever magazine, commercial photographer, artist yourself. Pleasure having you on the Crit House. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. I've had a great time doing this with you.
For our first ever My 6 episode.
Right. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely. And thank you all for watching The Crit House.